It's really an extra heavy-duty ring that I did there. I apologize. Anyway, good morning, everybody. So sorry for the delay. For those of you that are watching virtually, we had a few technical difficulties on our end here, but we got it all straightened up and we're ready to go. So welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Alton. Greetings to all of you, as I said, who are watching the service remotely. My name is Robin Berkeley. My pronouns are she, her. I am the president of this congregation, and I also serve as a worship associate. The First Unitarian Church of Alton is a small congregation in Alton, Illinois, spiritually led at the current moment by the Reverend Krista Taves, and in July 23, Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall will be taking over responsibilities as our minister, and we are grateful for that. Excuse me. Our mission drives us to live our values. As you can see on the screen above, we are outward reaching and inward seeking. We are creating and nurturing an intentional community that values acceptance, social justice, and the embodiment of UU principles. Come, let us question together. I'm glad you're here, whether we are in the sanctuary or online. We welcome everyone to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. We will open our service with a prelude by our accompanist, Joy. Thank you. An important ritual in the Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. Unitarian Universalists have many different interpretations of the flaming chalice, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Join me in celebrating all of these reasons and more. And if you're watching elsewhere and have a chalice or candle handy, please light it now and join us in the unison words projected on the screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Our opening prayer is number 419 in the Gray Hymnal, attributed to Kalidasa. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision, but today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Our first hymn is number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Please rise as you are able to embody your spirit and join the song. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Thank you. So today's message is about the lessons learned from the TV show Ted Lasso. And, I had to sit here and think, which principles does it align with? And, well, it's kind of all of them. And, it's kind of hard to avoid it. And some more predominantly than others, and I'll go through that in a little bit. And it feels maybe a little daunting, but it's a really awesome show. And I had to rewatch it this week. And it's only 36 episodes because it's 3 seasons, 12 episodes each. And it builds so much into the story. It's just really fabulous. So we'll get more into that in a little bit, but I really do feel like every single one of our principles are really aligned with that. So I'll spend some time talking to you about why I think they're aligned in that way. Excuse me. So as part of our joys and sorrows ritual, we take time in our weekly service to express our joys and concerns or sorrows. In front of us is a bowl filled with water and stones available to place in the bowl representing your joys and concerns. There's some up here and then there's some there in the back. Please start on my right, head to the back, proceed up to the left. Take a moment to stop and reflect. Send your energy out to the universe. Place your stone or stones in the water. If you are home, feel free to place a stone in a bowl of water and to offer your joys and sorrows to the universe. You may proceed. Take a moment. Let's just close our eyes to reflect for a few moments. There's been a lot going on this week. Some good, some not so good. Some daunting, some interesting. I'll just put it that way. There's some sparks of joy out there. There are some things that still keep us very, very concerned. And I hope that today's message will help us to make peace with some of that uncertainty and distress that we feel with the state of things, but invigorate us to continue to move forward, doing our work, to be that role model, to illustrate what it really truly means to be one with the divine. Send that good energy out to the world because it sure needs it right now. Okay, our next hymn is number 128 in the Great Hymnal, For All That Is Our Life. Is our life, we sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good. And make our own day glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and peace rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come and pray. For all that is our love. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our love. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good. Make our own day glad. Thank you. I love that. So if you are a fan of the show, then you know one of the most important things that Ted Lasso shares with people is to believe. Believe in whatever matters. And that's actually a replica of the sign that he has in the locker room for his players, to get them to believe in themselves, to bring them together as a cohesive unit. And so our reading today is called Believe in Yourself, Why It's Important and How to Do It. And this is just a small excerpt of a larger article. And it's by Tachiki Davis, who has a PhD from the Berkeley Wellbeing Institute. What does it mean to believe in yourself? Believing in yourself means having confidence in your own abilities. It means being able to trust yourself to do what you say you will do and knowing that those efforts will result in the desired outcomes. That means that believing in yourself comes from a mixture of several key psychological experiences. Experiences like self-worth, self-confidence, self-trust, self-respect, autonomy, and environmental mastery. We'll talk about how to build each of these components of yourself and why doing so can help you believe in yourself more. When we believe in ourselves, it kicks into gear all sorts of psychological processes that help us achieve our goals, manifest our dreams, and increase our well-being. But the flip side is also true. Lack of self-confidence or a lack of belief in ourselves means we are less likely to act, to change, or to push to make things better. As a result, when we expect to fail, we are actually more likely to fail. That means believing in ourselves is kind of like the key that turns the ignition and starts the car. We can't really go anywhere without it. Try as we might to push ourselves forward, we're blocked because our thoughts, attitudes, and actions aren't in alignment with our goals. So we either don't do what we need to do or we sabotage ourselves along the way, sometimes in obvious ways and sometimes in ways that are totally unconscious to us. Given that believing in ourselves is so important, how do you just believe in yourself already? As I mentioned above, believing in yourself includes things like self-worth, self-confidence, self-trust, autonomy, and environmental mastery. These concepts are related but different, so I think it's useful to learn about each of them. That way, we can explore which parts we struggle with and take more efficient action to start believing in ourselves more. That way, you'll get more than the advice of just believe in yourself. You'll have the information to understand why you don't and the tools to start shifting this belief. And here's our overview. Self-worth is the sense that you have value as a human being. Sound familiar? Self-confidence is a positive attitude about your abilities, qualities, and judgment. Self-trust is faith that you can rely on yourself. Autonomy is feeling able to choose and direct your own behavior. And environmental mastery is your belief that your efforts can result in the changes that you desire. These are some of the key components involved in believing in yourself. Maybe you struggle with just one of them, or maybe you struggle with all of them. But by understanding where your struggles lie, it is easier to start shifting your attitudes about yourself. Amen. Okay, well, I've been kind of excited. Like I said, I rewatched the episodes this week because I wanted to be really fresh in my head as I was considering how we want to go about and thinking about Ted Lasso as a secret Unitarian Universalist. Maybe not so secret, I don't know. So what do you know about the show? For some of you, you've probably watched it, some of you don't. And so the show is about this wonderfully eclectic, gentleman who was won a Division II football title, meaning American football. And he was they were an underdog, and they succeeded, and they brought everybody together. And he has this unique capacity to bring people together in unison, in harmony, to teach them how to depend on each other and to believe in themselves. And this believe is an important theme for Ted, across the board. This doesn't mean that he's not a flawed character. In many ways, he deals with anxiety and depression, and he struggled with a whole bunch of different things. In his marriage, he goes through a divorce in the middle of the show, and it's a big part of the show and why he deals with some of his anxiety disorders and panic attacks. So he has issues. I'm not saying that having those things are a flaw, but he's not like this utopian perfect person. He's a human with real feelings and real emotions and real challenges. And so the show opens with us learning the pilot and the series opens with us learning that he's won this championship, and now he is being hired to be a soccer or European football coach for a team that's struggling in the UK. And we find out that the reason why he's being asked to do this when he has absolutely no experience playing soccer, knows nothing about the game. He's American football, right? He is asked because the owner recently went through a divorce herself, the owner of the team, and because she's so mad at her ex-husband, she wants to wreak revenge on him, and so she brings in who she thinks might be the worst ever coach to come in and destroy the team. That was her job. That was her goal, which feels very disingenuous, right? So the whole first season is about her hiding that she's doing this and why she's doing it and what her motivations are. And then as the team starts to catch fire just a little bit, right, she suddenly goes, oh, maybe I made a mistake. So the end of the first season, we hear that Ted's team has been what we call relegated, which means they were in the Premier League and now they're in the Championship League, I think I don't know, it's very complicated. I don't follow soccer as much as I should. But they go down a level in terms of their team competition. But they came close to winning. And so it really reinforced that they made great strides where people started to work together as a team rather than a bunch of individual prima donnas, and really started to bring that team together. And then ultimately, by the end of the second season, they've been returned back to the Premier League. And if you haven't watched the show, I guess I'll share, but the bottom line is they end up coming in second place, which going from a team that was relegated to, which is basically like last place, basically, to become second place in the league, competing against big name teams like Manchester City and others. So some of the names are very common, right? And they talk about things that we know in the UK in terms of the soccer field or the field of European football is really good. So what makes Ted so eclectic is that he's just this forever optimist. He always has these little lovely, quirky little sayings that are analogies to things, and sometimes those stories and those analogies work, and sometimes they don't. He owns his stuff, but he works really hard to hold people to good standards, not about winning or losing, but about having the attitude to believe in yourself and to go out and to do the good things that we can do as a team, as people, as as a universe of human beings interrelating with each other. So the whole story is woven around just these lessons that he tries to impart on people, and so many of them just really resonate. Where you hear them and you go, "Yeah, I get that. I believe that. I believe in that story." So I think that I love the show because it's kind of a stress-free watch, right? There's no real horrific tensions like people being murdered, like you watch in, mystery TVs or or police dramas and doctor dramas and all that sort of stuff, which I enjoy watching, don't get me wrong. But this is a total feel-good TV show. And it came out at a time when we really needed to feel connected to each other in the middle of the pandemic. So it's, like I said, it's only 3 seasons. It started in 2020, and it was the show we didn't know we needed, for all intents and purposes. So there were 12 lessons. I saw this cute little meme out there, and there's these 12 important lessons. We're going to go through the first 6, then we'll go through the next 6, and then I'll sort of wrap it up with one of my favorite quotes that came basically to the second to last episode that I really appreciated. So let's start with the first one, which we already heard the reading for, which is believe in yourself. Having the confidence to feel like I can believe in what I want to believe, and I believe in myself to be able to be the master of my destiny. And as I said, this was the most important lesson that he imparted into his players, to the point where when they were in the second half of that last game that they were playing, when the championship was on the line, they had the chance of winning. They came in second, but they had the chance of winning. They at some point, that sign that you saw had all gotten torn up into tiny little pieces and got thrown into the garbage. And all the players secretly had fished those little pieces out, and they kept a little piece of it tucked into their shirt or their shin guards or their patches, and they were trying very hard to hold on to that belief. Even if the sign got pulled down and ripped up, they still believed in it. And I think this really resonates with our number 4 principle, which is that free and responsible search for truth and meaning. How can we engage in that free and responsible responsible search for truth and meaning if we don't believe in ourselves and our ability to discern what's out there and to make sense of that at some level or another? So I think when we believe in ourselves, we have more confidence to seek out things that truly resonate with who we are. The more that we get to know who we are, the easier it is for us to believe in ourselves and to open up our mind to new opportunities and new possibilities. That's the believing in ourselves. It's a foundational tool. If we don't believe in ourselves, our ability to discern the world becomes very challenging because we don't trust our guts and our own instincts. Number 2, doing the right thing is never the wrong thing. So he really pushes his people to do the right thing, to do what is right no matter what. And even if he doesn't always directly say it, he inspires people to do that. And this resonates with number 2, the justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, right? Because in order for us to have that justice, equity, and compassion in our human relations, it has to be about doing the right thing, however we define what is the right thing. And of course, we all know, right? What is the right thing can be very subjective. But I think broadly, most of us probably know what we should or shouldn't be doing on any given moment. And in order to have it to be just, to be fair, and to be compassionate, right? It's about we need those things to be able to do the right thing. Then it's number 5, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large. Again, the right of conscience, doing the right thing, what our gut, our hearts, our souls tell us that we should be doing. This is also something that sort of helps us with being connecting with doing the right thing, not only within our congregation, but in society at large. I mean, there's so many, we struggle, like I said earlier today, with these bombardments of messages out there about people and what DeSantis is doing in Florida and Trump being indicted, yay, on the one hand, but on the other hand, boy, wow, what does it tell us about doing the right thing and holding people accountable? And the fact that there's so much pushback from holding people accountable scares me. Because when do we just stop and say, oh, well, we're not going to hold people accountable anymore? We let people get away with stuff we shouldn't be letting them do. So doing the right thing, if we all do the right thing, that helps us in building that better universe the way I would like to see it. And then lastly, number 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, again, resonates with the idea of we're going to have a world community when we're doing the right thing, when we are doing and taking care to really think about how my behaviors are going to impact others. Even if you and I have different ethical lenses that we use to see the world and to decide what we think is the right thing. If I'm a utilitarian, then I'm about the greatest good for the greatest number. And if I'm a universalist, I'm looking for the one right way to be. And if I am more focused on the ethics of care, I'm caring about my community, and you might come up with different outcomes depending on what you think the right thing should be. But nonetheless, once we understand what our values are and what we believe to be the right thing, that's when we can start to have a good conversation about how we can meet the needs of everybody with that in mind. That's one of the lessons that I try to teach my MBA students. You're not always going to agree on what the right thing is to do, but you can find solutions that can satisfy everybody. And that's what we want to look for. In order to be able to negotiate, to collaborate, to be able to work with people with whom we differ greatly, we have to be able to think about and share what it is that we think is the right thing to do. Number 3, all people are different people. Well, I mean, that kind of resonates right at the beginning, that inherent worth and dignity of every person. So that's our first principle, right? All people are different. And Ted knows this because he knows the things that needs to motivate some players is not going to work for others. That he's got people that have confidence issues, people that have ego issues, people that have deeper traumas that they need to deal with. And he recognizes that. And even if he's uncomfortable, and boy, is he uncomfortable, he brings in a staff psychologist for the team to help them to cope with those things, to help them to set that groundwork. But he also recognizes everybody's very different in their approach to the world. He now has traveled across the pond, as they say, and he's working in the UK, and he is learning about different languages and different ways of being. Learning about the prevalence of tea, which he thinks is just brown water. And I disagree with him on that. On that one, I'll go to the mat on, but because I'm a tea drinker. But he's learning about different things. He learns how to cook biscuits, which are cookies in American English, but biscuits. And he gives them to his boss every day. And she's like, these are so good. And like, where did you buy them? And he goes, well, I just made them. I just figured out the final recipe that's going to work really well. He cared about her. He just recognized everybody is different and everybody needs different things. And he's got really amazing emotional intelligence. Like he can read a room and then he can know how to poke and know what you need versus what you need, which is pretty awesome. And then also it's number 3, the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. We're all different here in our congregation. We all believe different things, embrace different points of view. We certainly had debates about what to do with this building. Where do we want to go? Everybody's got a different opinion on that. And it's okay that we're different. It's okay to share that we have different values. But it's also, just because we're different doesn't mean we cannot work together towards a common goal and a common outcome. Number 4, seeing the good in others. And he always looks for the good in people, even people who have betrayed him. And one of the big betrayals that happens is Nate the Great, who was started out as basically the kit man who took care of all the players, right? And he became an assistant coach, and then his ego got a little too big for him, and he quit the team, and he becomes a part of an opposing team. And he's smart. He's a good tactician. He knows the game probably better than Ted does. But even with that betrayal, even with the negative things that Nate did to him, he forgave him. And he saw the good in Nate. And I'm going to I'm going to come back to this point when I wrap it up with one of the final quotes that I think really that inspired sort of the show, that kind of the way it wrapped up was really beautiful. So where does that resonate with our principles? Number one, it goes with number one, right? That inherent worth and dignity of every person. When we believe truly that there is an inherent worth and dignity in every person, we can start to see the good in others. I know that's hard to do. It's really, really hard to do, particularly when we see somebody like a Pat Robertson, right, who passed away this week, right? There's a part of us that wants to go, good riddance. And then there's other parts of us that I hope are there telling us, was he all bad? No, maybe mostly not so nice to people. But there has to have been something good. And he has value as a human being, even if he has values that I don't like and I don't share. He was a very divisive individual. There is inherent dignity and worth in him, even if I don't like him. And that's always a hard thing to reconcile in my brain. I work really hard on that. As many of you know, I'm a 9/11 survivor, and I had that very same reaction when Osama bin Laden was killed. It was like part of me wanted to celebrate because, I almost died that day. And then on the other hand, I didn't want to celebrate it. I didn't want to celebrate the death of a human being. It just didn't feel right in some way. So that inherent worth and dignity is always the challenging one, I think, for me, to really see people for who they are, and even if I don't like them, that there's still value to them. And then number 7, the respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And that interdependent web requires us to really see the good in others and to see how our behaviors have an impact on others. That enables us to kind of work together in a more interdependent way to achieve what we want to achieve. Number 5 was the courage. Courage is about being willing to try. And again, it's about giving it your best shot, believing in yourself, and being willing to try something, even if you fail. Because we learn, as we know, most from our failures, not from our successes. But being willing to try something is always important. And that's something that Ted did often, right? Because he was learning the essence of the game. By the end of the 3rd season, he was into it. He got it. He could read the field. He understood what was going on out there. He was a quick learner. He had good staff to support him. He was more like the inspirational leader, and he wasn't the tactician. But he knew how to pull people together. But he always encouraged people to try hard, and he was always willing to try something new. If somebody said, let's try the false 9. Let's try the false 9 approach, right? And people would be like, yeah, we'll give that a try. Let's try the triangle approach. Let's try, the statue of whatever it was. They came up with all these fun, funky plays and encouraged the players to come up with these ideas and work with them to practice. He believed in trying, and trying is so important. Now, you can go back to sort of Star Wars and Yoda, right? There is do or do not. There is no try. Yeah, it's okay. I think those things are not out of alignment. I think you got to just dive in and do it, and that's what Ted talks about. It's going in and just doing it. And you may not succeed, but you're going to try. You're going to do it. You're going to leap in, and you're going to make that happen. So even if Yoda might say don't try, it's okay. I think it's in alignment. Number 6, vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. And this is where justice, equity, and compassion comes into play, and making ourselves vulnerable to somebody else, even if we might get hurt a little bit, right? And vulnerability is really hard. Ted makes himself pretty vulnerable to his ex-wife, to his team, letting them know that, that he's dealing with panic attacks. He forget, that gentleness and that vulnerability that he brings to almost every relationship he has is really profound. I love the fact that he just lays himself pretty bare out there, and has learned how to think through and manage his anxiety and do the things that he needs to do. And I think that really resonates with number 2, again, that justice, equity, and compassion, that its vulnerability is not something we should shy away from, that vulnerability enables us to exercise justice, equity, and compassion in the way that we interact with others, and how important that is to do. Next slide. Thank you. Number 7, tell the truth. Right? He wants you to just be honest. He'll deal with whatever's in front of him. Like when his boss tells him, I've been trying to undermine you all season and I'm sorry. Right? When the boss finally admits that what she was trying to do was set him up to fail, and then when it didn't work, it shocked her. And she had to own that. It was so important for her to own that. And when Jamie, which is like the shark song, but anyway, he was a character that took an interesting arc as well, and Jamie needed to make himself vulnerable. Number 1 goes back to number 6, but also to tell the truth about what was going on for him internally regarding his relationship with his father and how painful that was for him, and how in many ways it drove him to be the successful individual he was, to prove his father wrong, but at the same time letting go of it when he needed to, and that was a beautiful thing. So telling the truth, telling our truth, whatever that truth may be, is so key, right? The justice, equity, and compassion, and that we need to tell the truth and being honest with each other to have that compassion, and that right of consciousness, right? The use of the democratic process in our society. Telling the truth requires us, is an important part of sharing what we believe is to be our truth and what the truth could and should be. We need the truth in order to be able to engage in that compassion and that right of consciousness and democratic process, because we want to hear what everybody has to say. That's why the democratic process is about. It's about hearing everybody's voices, not having voices squelched or shut down, but having everybody be heard. Number 8, winning is an attitude. And I tried really hard as I was thinking about this the other night, which one does it align with? And I'm like, it's kind of all of them. It's not really any one in particular, but it's about the attitude that we bring to the table. It's not about the win or the loss, but it's about the integrity, the resilience that we bring to this, and enabling us to have that integrity and that resilience, enabling us to accept others as they are, respecting individual paths to their own truth, working hard on our own, self-acceptance, accepting our own dignity as well as the dignity of others. All of those things are about cultivating the attitude of what we believe in and living in those values. That's what I think about when I think about winning is an attitude. It's about understanding those 7 principles, living those 7 principles every day of our life. Number 8, optimists do more. Now, this was a little hard one too, because I'm thinking an optimist. And I'm not talking about toxic positivity, which is like everything is rainbow and unicorns all day long. Ted also got, right, that there were some not so good things happening in himself, in others, in his team, what was going on for his team, etc. But I think optimism is linked to this thing called psychological capital. It's hope and resilience, and it's optimism, and all of those things give us the energy to do the battles that we need to do. And it also connects with believing in ourselves and believing in others. Because when we believe in that inherent worth of others, as an optimist, right, we are much more willing, it's a more positive environment to be in, to build those bridges and to build those connections. Number 10, to stay teachable. We always are learning from the day we take our first breath to the day we take our last breath. We should always be learning. And part of that learning process is number three. It's number one on my list, but number three, right? The acceptance of one another and encouragement of spiritual growth, right? I can be teachable because I'll tell you, when I first came here, I had, like many of us, right? I had religious trauma. I grew up in the Catholic faith. It did not embrace me, who I was as a woman, and certainly as a lesbian. There was no place for me in the Catholic Church. At least I didn't feel like there was. And I walked in here a little reticent, not sure what I was going to experience. I'd heard good things, but it was about learning and figuring it out. And I came in here and I realized that this is a good place for me. That there were the things that resonated most for me, the Buddhism thing was here, definitely. But as I started to hear people talk about pagan or humanist things, and I thought, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I went, oh, that's pretty darn cool. And my daughter taught me a good lesson when I said, why do you believe in those Greek gods? Mom, I don't believe in the Greek gods. I believe in the values that they matter. I'm like, duh. Okay, I get it. I know. You can hear me, right? You can hear Margaret saying that. Totally. Like, stop being so self-righteous. I'm like, okay, you're right. I'm not good. So I had to learn, right? I had to still open up my mind a little bit more to sort of embrace that. And I'm glad that I did, because I don't really feel like I resonate with any one particular way of thinking about my spirituality. I think it's always in flux, and it's always, my goal is to figure out what I need in the moment and to embrace that at the time. So I have to stay teachable myself. And then, of course, it resonates with number 4, that free and responsible search for truth and meaning, right? I got to stay teachable. I got to be willing to learn and search for what is truthful and meaningful to me. Number 11, this is one of my favorites. Be a goldfish. Ted says that a goldfish is the happiest animal on the planet. Why? Because it literally forgets things in about 10 seconds. Its brain capacity is so small that, if you hurt the goldfish, 10 seconds later, it doesn't remember. And what he did is he told people, when you make a mistake, be a goldfish. It's okay that you made a mistake. Learn from the mistake and keep moving forward. Keep pushing yourselves forward. And I think it can resonate with a lot of them, but the one that really screamed for me was number 1, that inherent worth and dignity of every person. Because it's also about being gentle with ourselves and valuing that sometimes we're going to be making mistakes, and we need to have compassion for ourselves when we do that, and to be able to embrace people in that manner. And then number 12 on this list right now is happiness is a choice. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. We can choose to be miserable, or we can choose to be happy. It doesn't mean toxic positivity. I want to be really clear. There's a big difference between, there's nothing wrong, I don't want to deal with the wrong things, I'm just going to hide my eyes and my ears and my mouth, and I'm not going to acknowledge that things are bad. That's not what we're talking about. But it's about, how do we find joy even in the simplest of moments? Whether it's walking through a park and having a conversation with someone, or making cookies, or you walking through puddles today in the rain. Thank you, God, for the rain. But having happiness, choosing happiness over misery, is so important, and sometimes really hard to do, particularly in a society where we deal with a lot of mental illness. Feeling happy when there's a lot of things weighing on us is really challenging. What provides us with it connects with that inherent worth and dignity of every person, because when I believe in the dignity of all people, I can find the positive side of things. I can find happiness in my interactions with others, in the way that I deal with compassion in my human relations with others, in the goal of that world community where we have justice for all. This is all foundational for giving us happiness. When we do these things, it brings us happiness. So, as I said to you, Ted really struggles with his own stuff, but he always was gentle and forgiving of others. When someone said, I did this harm to you, he said, I forgive you. And you knew that he truly meant it. You know that he truly meant it. And the last quote that I really liked, it was the second to last episode. He's having a conversation with his assistant coach who's been with him through thick and thin, who actually was down on his luck, and Ted lifted him up and helped him to get back on his feet, to have now the life that he loves. And he says to him, because he's struggling, his assistant is struggling with forgiving Nate for what Nate did to him and to the team. And he says, I hope that either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions we take in our weakest moments, but rather for the strength we show if and when we're given a second chance. This goes back to, again, having self-compassion and belief in ourselves, and recognizing that sometimes we're going to step in a steaming pile of dog poop and we're going to make mistakes. And the goal here is that if we're given the opportunity to learn from our mistakes and to pick up and to keep moving forward, that we should be judged based on that, not based on the initial actions. Because you know what? There's a lot of us that have to deal with those sorts of things. When we look at corporations in the way that they behave, when we look at individual human beings in the way that they behave, sometimes we are not so gentle with people who say, I learned a good lesson and I was wrong. We still are mad at them because of something that they did 20 years ago. When what we realize is we're holding on to that pain, that's hurting us. It's not hurting them anymore. That's hurting us. And that's the lesson that he tells Jamie Tartt, who's their star player, one of their star players. He tells him, because he's struggling with how he reacts with his father. And he says to him, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. And it's okay to give that gift to yourself. And it changes the way that you think about yourself, because that then resonates with all of these things we just talked about today. And so he forgave the kid, the guy, the player, forgives his father, and he goes in and he does a great game. And they, of course, win the game, and everybody's excited because they now have the potential to win the whole thing, the championship. And they don't. They end up, coming in second place, but it was still huge. And at the end of the show, we learn Ted goes home to his family because he missed his kids so much. It was the source of why he was having these anxiety, the anxiety things, that, and of course, dealing the unresolved issues about dealing with his father who had committed suicide when he was a young teenager, maybe 9 or 10, if I think I remember correctly from the show. And he learned how to process that. He learned how to forgive his mom. He would say things like, F you for not doing this, and I'm glad you did this, but F you for doing this, and I'm glad you did this, and F you for doing this, to his own mother, who was like, and then she's like, you're right, I'm sorry. She owned herself, right? Because he modeled, what it meant to own those things. So wrapping this all up, I think Ted Lasso embodies all the values that we care about. I think that there is so much to be learned from that show in terms of being teachable, forgiving others, having hope and resilience and optimism to make things work, being honest, being vulnerable. These are all things that I think should guide us as Unitarian Universalists, because we've got a challenging road in society today, dealing with all sorts of massive and ugly, horrible political changes that are afoot. I just heard this morning of the first endorsement for Ron DeSantis coming from a governor in Oklahoma, which shouldn't necessarily surprise me, but as he gets some traction, I'm concerned for my own well-being, to be honest. As a lesbian, am I, and as a diversity researcher, right? Like, where is my future if this man gets into office? Do I probably need to retire and decide what to do differently in my life? I don't know. I'll go become a Walmart greeter or something. I don't know, but whatever it takes. But I'm telling you, it scares the heck out of me, and I don't want anybody to feel that way. So let's all, commit to being goldfish, to learn from our mistakes, to keep moving forward, and to honor the lessons learned from Ted Lasso. Amen. All right, our final hymn is number 1008 in the Teal hymnal, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every breed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. In a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, when we hear our voices in each other's words, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts within, and we feel the power of each other's name, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. Jesse, if you could take the offertory. Or thank you, Marcella. Yay. Well, as you know, it's stewardship time, and I just heard earlier this week we're at almost $50,000, which is about 62% towards our goal. So if you have not already given, please make sure you get your pledge card filled out. There's either a digital one that you got via email or the paper one that you got in the mail. So please donate as you can, as much as you are able to. Maybe we can start. Stewardship is for go ahead. Stewardship is for financial donations as well as volunteering your time. We always need volunteers, I promise. You can mail your gift if you need to, or use Givelify or PayPal. You all know the deal. We've been doing this for a while, so we have the messages up there as we need to. All right. I invite you to join me in the offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. In terms of announcements, not too many. Next week is Father's Day. Claudia will be in the pulpit next week, and then on the 25th, we will not be in the church building at all. If you want to watch a service, we will be projecting on our YouTube page. I believe our YouTube page, right, Alex? I don't know how GA is going to do it. We'll figure it out. But we will be projecting that so that we have access to that. We'll figure all the details out and let you know when it is in church this week. We're continuing the work in the basement, doing what we need to do down there. Looks really good. Yay! Yeah, Jesse said there's no water downstairs. Yes! We like that. We like that. So any other messages, any announcements you all have for me? I apologize. I have not bought the bride things yet. It's been a rough week, so busy week. Anything? Nope. Yep. Nope. Yep. Okay. Good. So we'll extinguish our chalice. I invite you to join me in reciting a prayer and reciting the prayer as I extinguish the chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. Our closing words are number 699 from the Gray Hymnal. It's Philippians chapter 4. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honorable, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on those things. And we'll have our postlude from Joy. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance today. Of living every day. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right.